So, in this session, we're going to be talking about something super important, which is discovering your hook and how to do that. You may want to listen to this one a few times because I'm going to give a lot of nuggets. Okay, so here is the sheet that we're going to be using in a moment. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about what the hook is. So the hook is something that a school looks at to determine if you're going to be a good person to bring into their institution. So while you are the consumer, so is the school. It's an interesting relationship that way. The school's like, hey, do we want this person to come into our school? Do we want them to be part of our community? And they're going to be looking and reading your application to determine what kind of person you are and to determine whether or not they want you to come in. So as you are thinking about your hook, you just really want to highlight those amazing things about yourself. And I know if you are shy, if you are anxious at all, if you are not used to this whole process can feel very overwhelming. It does not need to. First of all, there's no way to get it wrong. So let's just say that right now. There is no way to get it wrong. But what you can do is you can enhance your application. So again, before we go through this, I'm going to give you a couple examples of students that I've seen different hooks with. So one of the students I worked with who ended up getting a full ride to Duke and then eventually a full ride to Columbia Law School. His hook was leadership, and he had ample evidence to support it. He was class president. He was the captain of one of the sports teams. He was a leader in his religious community. So the leadership piece was super easy. But when you do a hook, you don't necessarily say, I'm a leader. Like, that's not the hook you say. It's more you tell a story that demonstrates it. So his essay was all about the different types of leadership activities he had done. Another student I worked with also got into a premier school. He did leadership, but he did it as I'm a leader from behind. I forget the phrase that he used, but he talked about how his position on the field gave him the ability to see how other people should be doing things. His position in the orchestra allowed him to keep the tempo of the songs. And then he also leveraged in that kind of how he was a community contributor, and this was tied into his leadership, and how he had started a program. He'd actually started a couple programs to help young students. One of the programs went terribly and the other one was great. But the one that went bad, he hadn't communicated with the parents, and that ended up being problematic. So he used that to talk about how he learned from the experience. And then the second thing he did, which was to create music lessons for underprivileged kids, how he was able to take from one experience and bring it into another. So again, a brilliant essay, both leadership, very, very different types of it. Women also have leadership. Their leadership tends to be a little bit different how it's presented. And the leadership is just one of many. I've had some students come in and their big thing is Indian dance has been super popular. Community builder. And for this particular individual, they wrote about community building from just different elements of their life. I will encourage you with your hook and with your essay. If summer camp has been a big part of your life, you can mention it in passing, but you don't want it to be the full focus of your experience. Way too many students do that, and you want to stand out. So to determine your hook, you have to figure out what makes you unique, and you have to be willing and open to doing this. Again, I know it can be intimidating, but it's super important to do. Are you good with people? Are you a school leader? Are you intellectually hungry? One client I worked with, his big thing was intellectual hunger. He had created all these programs to bring together state data. He had worked on all kinds of projects with other people trying to find information about things. And there was so much evidence. He also actually started a YouTube channel teaching other students how to do things. So again, he had tons and tons of evidence to support this intellectual hunger piece. You can do sports. Sports can also be a hook. That's a separate doorway to get in. And admissions typically, believe it or not, admissions will give the final stamp of approval on athletes. So they are involved. I don't want to diminish what admissions does with athletes, but a lot of times those pipelines are coming through the athletic director and through the coaches. So if you're planning on going through athletics, you're not going to go through the admissions department. You're going to go through the coaches to access a university that way. I had a college admissions person come in one time, and he sat down with my students and he looked at them, and he was from a very elite private school up in the Northeast. It's a very small school. And he said, "Who here plays oboe?" That was his question. Who here plays oboe? And so all the students who had worked all these years were kind of crestfallen because none of them played oboe. But that was something that he knew his school needed. So he was out there actively trying to help the orchestra conductor find oboe players. So that was kind of an interesting hook. I'm not saying that will work for you, but you need to know that with these schools, sometimes there are magic doors that open that you wouldn't expect because a student has pursued their passion. So your hook is your secret sauce. It's whatever sets you apart. And it can be a bunch of things, but we're going to have it under one umbrella. And the reason is because nobody can remember that much information about you. The person reading needs one hook to kind of hold you on. And then they can remember all the details. So work with me here. But I had a friend of mine was very successful on Jeopardy! And the reason was because of the way she remembered information. She had one hook that she hung the information on, and then she disseminated it into pockets afterwards. So if the hook was candy, for example, there was red candy and yellow candy. And then under red candy, there were Red Hots and cherry licorice. And then under yellow candy, lemon heads and banana popsicles, or it's not candy, but whatever, you get my point. The brain works best that way. So when you do the hook, you want to have an overall theme, and this theme can be pulled through with your recommendations. And you want the overall theme, and then you want the evidence to support it. So if your theme is red candy, you want to give a bunch of supporting themes. So if your theme is leadership, a bunch of supporting examples. If it's how you build bridges and connect people, a bunch of examples. If it's how you're funny, a bunch of examples. And the reason I have funny on there is because I was talking to a person who does a lot of international admissions, and the international admissions are particularly competitive for people from China trying to get into the Ivy League schools. And in this particular case, the student was a stand-up comic. And that's what set this student apart from all the other people who submitted tons and tons of research, published research articles and awards and this and that. It was so different than anything anyone had seen. And obviously they had the grades and such. But your hook is something that a school finds so unique and compelling about you that they're like, wow, we really want this student on campus. They're going to add to the texture of the incoming class. So please keep that in mind. Go with what is authentic to you. If your hook is not authentic, it's going to fall apart and nobody's going to believe it. It doesn't have to be this absolute powerful thing. It can be quirky. It can be funny. And I want you all to read Essays That Worked. I like the Johns Hopkins versions. There's a link to it in this, but I want you to read those so you can see how these hooks are told through stories. You want it to be told through a story. A story is way more compelling than you just talking about yourself and just giving data. So let's see. So your hook is your value add to the school. And what I'm asking you to do, and I know that some of you may be shy in doing this, but this process is you can't be shy. You need to just own up to how awesome you are. You need to own up to it and be like, yeah, that is me. I believe in myself in these ways. So I want you to list 5 of your best personal qualities. I want 5 separate ones. I know some of y'all are like, ooh, I'll just, no, 5 separate qualities. And then I'm asking you to dive into your favorite 5 childhood memories. And the reason is because what makes you unique is often found in childhood when you don't have a structure on top of you, when you're more organic in how you are. So the childhood memories can yield so much insight. So your favorite childhood memories. And then I want you to think about how other people, what would they describe your best qualities? And if you don't know, ask them. It's okay. And if you have, a mother or a father or a guardian or whoever, sisters or brothers who won't give you snarky answers, you can ask that person and just say, what would you say are some of my best qualities? And then we're looking for evidence. We're going to start moving a little bit to the evidential piece of this. What are 5 things you have contributed to your school or community? Because they're going to want to know, this is what you say you are. What are the stories that you're going to tell that convey this? So 5 things you have contributed. And they can be small things. It can be you led a pep rally, or maybe that's a big thing, but like you participated, you went to school tailgates, things like that. And then why would a professor want you in their class? A school has a couple layers. One of it is the school community. So when someone in admission is reading your application, they want to see that you were involved, that you cared about, you were involved with, you joined clubs, you somehow became part of the fabric of the school that you were attending, that you didn't stand in the hallway and ignore everybody, that you somehow, and if it wasn't the school, it was the community. Maybe school wasn't a safe place for you, so you really just expressed yourself in other ways. That's fine. Why would a professor, though, want you in their class? What are you going to offer to that classroom? What are you going to bring in? And the people are reading for this because while the college has the community piece, it's really an academic institution, right? So if a professor, you ask great questions, you enjoy doing research, whatever it is, what is some reason somebody would want you in class? And then what are some things you can offer to the school? And we kind of touched on this a little bit. They're going to look, so the way that this works, and it's actually true in career stuff too, people look to the past to determine where you're going to go in the future. So if you were involved in something in the past, there's a strong likelihood if you enjoyed it, you're going to continue it into the future. So maybe you were involved in certain clubs, or maybe you had a club experience that was great for high school, but in college you're planning on doing something else. Just the fact that you're involved, that's what they're looking to see. So you're going to make this list and you can add things to it. This is just to get you started. What you're looking for is your theme for your hook. And you're going to review this information and see if there's any theme or thread that comes through, that a few of the examples point to this one thing. And that's going to be your red candy, if you will. That's going to be the thing that you're going to work with. And then you can tease it out. And then you can say, are you a red Twizzler or are you red hot? Doesn't matter. But the point is that you then tweak it so that it really reflects who you are. Once you have the hook and you feel like you can stand behind it, it absolutely represents you. Then again, you can pull it through in your essays. You can pull it through in your side essays. You can pull it through in your teacher recommendations. You don't have to pull it through in all of those things. It can be overkill if you do that. But you do want to have little sprinklings or anecdotes. So when if I were to go to the admissions person and say, hey, tell me about so-and-so. If they had read your application, I want them to be able to say, well, overall, what we think is this. And we think this because. And if they can do that, then you know that you have just found your perfect hook. So good luck with this.